Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the season two Fearlessly You podcast. My name is Sophia, and I am here today with Natalia. And it's very cool because we only met very briefly, very recently, but nonetheless, she's a person that really has inspired me, and I'm super happy that she's here today. So, I'm very excited for this chat and for you guys to hear her story. And without further ado, I would like to hand over the microphone to you, Natalia. And yeah, just start off with would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I'm just really happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Um, and like you said, it was a I feel like it was a very divinely orchestrated meeting. Because I met where we met in Thailand, there was just a lot of really, really cool connections, and I feel like this was one of them. So, yeah, super excited to be here. And so, in terms of a little bit about me, well, I'm a somatic junkie. I am a person who just loves doing whatever it takes to be in the body, whether it's be using nature to help me be in the body, whether it's yoga, whether it's dance, whether it's somatic therapy, whether it's anything. So anything that helps me be a little bit more embodied. And I'm not one for like labels. I'm a somatic coach or somatic therapist. I'm just all about being in the body. And I feel like that is kind of what's gotten me here today.
Definitely.
Yeah, in my own journey. S-
So, oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, 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 go ahead.
Where did your journey start?
So, I mean, it's been a very long journey. I feel like for many of us. Well, it started with um I would say being on noticing and becoming aware that I am living life just on autopilot. And that started happening, I would say in my late teens, early 20s, where I started to notice that I was just having a lot of issues. I was kind of showing up being super functional in the day-to-day life, but on the inside, I was not functional at all. There was a lot of feelings that I had that I wasn't able to show, that I wasn't able to express, that I was feeling. So, in some way, I was very numb on the inside. I could feel a lot, but I didn't know how to like access those feelings because in the way that I was brought up, was supposed to show up as a certain way. So it was, you're supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to um, not rock the boat too much, do it all right, and then the rest is history. So, as a result of that upbringing, because there wasn't a lot of space for like authentic self-expression, a lot of feelings, I shut them down within myself, and I just had a smile on my face throughout pretty much, my life and 24/7. And in the end, what I realized that did is like it created a big disconnection from who I am and how I'm showing up in the world. So while I was, successful and functioning well and, doing all the things, on the inside, I was just a total wreck. And um, it led to a lot of self-destruction. So like there was alcohol abuse in my life, there was eating disorders, there was just a lot of self-destruction at that point where I just realized like, okay, I'm super disconnected from myself and I don't know how to cope with it. And that was when that kind of that pressure cooker of pain builds up from the inside from all that numbness and sort of the oppression, that was kind of my first I would say that was my first initiation point in my life to start looking at myself and um yeah, try and figure out what in the world is going on. And that was the point where I quit my corporate job. I was living in Toronto at the time. I quit my corporate job and I went to live in an ashram in India. And that was kind of the start of, we call it awakening nowadays. I just call it like becoming real and meeting what's really there inside myself. That was the beginning of that journey because spending time in an ashram in India put me in touch with a lot of spiritual practices. That's where I got introduced to breath work and yoga and Ayurveda and all the healthy nutrition. So ultimately, there I started healing my body. So I started healing the eating disorder. I like overcame all the alcohol abuse. And I kind of reconnected to something bigger than myself when I was there. Yeah, that's kind of that's the first initiation. And after that, when I got back to Toronto, it was like, the door was opened. And what I realized when I was in India is that all the modalities that I experienced while I was there, it just all felt like home. Like there was this hunger within me after that to to explore more. I wanted to be like, okay, like what is yoga? Like what is Ayurveda? What is all this holistic nutrition? What is this energy healing? How come a person can see my aura and, and
Yeah.
tell me what's going on within myself, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of uh initiated my learning process when I got back from India, back to Canada. I just used up whatever money I saved from my corporate job and I used it towards every like healing training, healing course I could possibly invest in. I did it. So there was like a period of like I would say 4 years where it was just taking in information and trying to make sense of what happened to me in India, trying to, put the puzzle pieces of my own kind of psyche and my own body together. Um, and it was full on. So that's kind of the first step.
Okay. And other steps?
Other steps. That made me eventually, I just gave out a bunch of flyers and I found like some ghetto basement in some commercial building space in Toronto, just outside of Toronto. Yeah, sent out a bunch of flyers and I was like, I'm gonna start teaching my yoga, like just like that. I'm gonna start teaching whatever I learned in my trainings, whatever I learned in India. So I started teaching, and to my surprise, people started coming. And um, one thing led to another. And what I realized was that when people were coming to class, a lot of the time in class, I was like, it was kind of like therapy. We were doing therapy in class. Like we were doing the yoga, but the questions that people would ask, the insights that people would share, it would always lead to just these like very philosophical therapeutic conversations. And from there, um, people started asking me if I was available for like one-on-one sessions. And at that point, I was like, what kind of a one-on-one session can I possibly, offer? And it was one-on-one yoga sessions, but for like out of a 90-minute session, for like 75 minutes, I was like coaching people. And the other 15 minutes were a little bit of breath work or a little bit of, poses, but the majority of it was like coaching and it wasn't, the traditional coaching that we're doing today. It was kind of like information was just coming. They would just ask me questions and information was coming and I was just relaying this information. So, um, after a while, I decided, okay, well, if this is something that's coming easy to me, maybe I'll just go into that direction, and I'll start kind of dabbling in maybe learning or being educated a little bit more in, how to do that for people, how to show up in like a more as a more therapeutic space holder. And so that was what initially eventually led me to pursue somatic therapy, training as a therapist, and really every kind of sort of psychological modality that you can think of. So energy healing, energy psychology, tapping, you name it. Like I did it all. And what was really cool about this journey is that everything that I was learning, it was in order to kind of help myself. And once I would have kind of an embodied experience of whatever I was learning, then I would put it out in a class or in a workshop or with a client. So I feel like a lot of my life today, up to this point, and really, I kind of like it this way. I'm hoping it's gonna stay this way forever. It's like a living, breathing, like evolution where I'm doing my own work and then that's what I put out into the world. Then it's like the next step I do my own work and then that's what I put out into the world, and those are kind of the clientele that I start to attract, et cetera and et cetera. So it's very alive. This journey is still very, very much alive, and it's in real time. And I feel like that is what I love the most about kind of where I'm at today. Um, I did that for a while. Um, and then there came a point where I was doing all the things. So I was drinking the green juice, I was eating the salads, I was making the tempeh sandwiches or whatever. Um, it was the salt baths and the Epsom salts and the detoxes and and the meditations and the dance and the immersions and stuff. But there was this sense of insecurity that was still kind of lurking underneath everything that I was doing. So again, as I feel like the pattern in my life has been, you show up and you do all the right things. This was also something that started showing up in my healing journey. So I was doing all the right things, but then like there was something deeper. There was something deeper that I wasn't touching. And I took a break and I went to Costa Rica. I spent my first winter in Costa Rica about 12 years ago because I just it was a calling. It was just like, okay, I've always been a nature person, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to Costa Rica and I'm gonna like see what's there for me. And being in the nature of Costa Rica, and I don't know if you've ever been, but the nature in this place is extremely wild. Like it's very pure and it's wild, and in a way, it's kind of close to our like unconditioned self, if you think about it. Like that's how I like to think about it. So being in nature here, and I started to develop like a real kind of deep connection to nature when I came to Costa Rica. I started to connect deeper into my body uh, when I got here. And that began this whole process of like thawing out some of the numbness that was still kind of lurking in my body. And uh, ultimately led me to move here because it just felt like this is where I needed to be. And that's where I am now. And now where I am, it's taking me like I'm developing a lot of different kind of somatic experiences with nature as a component. Especially working with women's bodies is something that's very important to me. including nature into it, including kind of somatics into it. And where I'm headed next is basically uh, doing that in other parts of the world, in other parts that feel good to me. And Thailand was one of these parts of the world recently, and that's ultimately kind of how we met.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a little bit of my journey.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And it's like the first time I'm hearing all your background, which is very, very interesting. And there are a few things that I want to go back to. So, when you said you did all the things, for example, the green juice and the examples that you gave, that's, I think that a lot of people can relate to because we usually look on the external factors in our lives, the things that are super easy to access to. Okay, I can change instead of drinking Coca-Cola, I can have a water, I can, like little swaps to initially like feel better physically. But if you're not addressing what's here and here, then you're not really healing yourself. And I love that you pointed that out because when we met in Thailand, it's what I felt. You were bringing the value into the retreat that we were at. So we were doing the yoga, we were having like these nourishing meals, but the classes with you and the workshops and the one-on-ones, those were the ones that went deeper and that helped me. And I know also from other sources that helped us addressing something that was deeper. And that like just with that said, it's like you really embody that, like you live that as you pointed out yourself. Um, and so actually, how did you figure out how to do that?
That's a really good question. So before I kind of answer that, I want to just reflect back on what you said about, doing all the things and receiving kind of more value and dropping deeper into yourself at the retreat. I think that just like anything else, healing can also be a head thing,
Sure.
believe it. It can be a head thing. So um, just like we can be, we have our to-do lists, especially here in the West, growing up in Canada, in North America, it's all about the to-do list. It's all about getting things done. It's very, very head, 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 head. No time to connect to myself, no time to connect to my body. But if I do connect to my body, it's like I don't even know what's in my body. So I'm staying here. And I on my journey when I realized that even healing could be a head thing, like a mental concept, it was really funny to me. Like the whole concept of that was just really funny to me. And it was specifically funny because that's what I ended up doing at some point. And so I kind of saw myself like from the corporate days when I had the to-do list and I was getting it all done and it was all very perfect and it was all very functional. It's like, okay, I'm going to do the same thing because this is what I was told to do. In the ashram, in my healing sessions, in my workshops, this is what I'm supposed to do. These are the steps, so I'm just going to do that. And that in and of itself is actually like sometimes a trick that the ego will use to distract ourselves from actually feeling what's here in the moment. And so how I figure that out is because I wasn't making progress. I was still numb uh inside myself while doing all the right things. And um it was, I would say that the thing that kind of helped me the most and helped me kind of reconnect with my body the most was movement. And it was unstructured movement. So it actually wasn't yoga. It was like I would turn on a song and I would just start moving my body. And I would see what would start moving in my body. And then it's like, oh, all of a sudden I'm having an emotional release. Like, oh, all of a sudden I'm like in rage. Oh, all of a sudden I'm dropping into a deep, deep grief. And that was kind of my key to be like, okay, there's something in that. And that is what ultimately led me to somatic therapeutics and somatic therapy. Um, because in somatics, it's not, we don't talk about feelings here. We connect to the body and we try to put words to what we're feeling. And that is something that is actually very challenging for a lot of people because apart from the fact that many of us we live in our heads, the other factor is like we never learned. We never had modeling for like that emotional um that emotional connection to ourselves because as we are growing, as we're little people who are growing, and it's like, let's say, you stubbed your toe when you're 4 and you start crying like a crazy, 4-year-old. And what that 4-year-old who's in pain really needs is for someone to say like, hey, I see that you're hurt and it's like it's really really painful, and maybe that 4-year-old needs a hug for someone to say, hey, like I'm right here and it's okay, and I'm right here with your pain. And that's how we become adept at identifying, oh, okay, I'm in pain when I feel this, and I deserve support when I feel this, or I can reach out for support when I feel this. But for a lot of us, especially the clients that I work with, for a lot of us, that wasn't available. So it's like when we were feeling a feeling, um, many of us were kind of told to, get over it or shut it down, or, even worse, we were judged for it or we were shamed for it, where we were criticized for it. And so eventually that piles up. And so the message that we kind of internalize inside ourselves is that it's not okay to feel, it's not safe to feel. So we're going to come up with a lot of these kind of very defensive, protective strategies, including our armor. And some of these strategies are just staying up in the head all the time so that we don't have to feel what's happening in the body. And one of my strategies was like people pleasing. So it's like I can just do this all the time. I'll just walk through life all the time, and no one will ever know what's really going on inside myself because it's really not safe to feel. And so yeah, to answer you, how I figured it out is um I just started to get curious about my body and how it feels to be in my body. So, like, if I'm dancing and I'm moving and somehow I feel like a wave of emotion coming through, I would let it come through. Of course, I would be by myself, like I'd be in a safe space by myself, and I would let it come through and then be like, oh, that was grief. And I would identify that for myself. Or, I'd be like, I turn on some like, big pumping music, and um like there was rage coming in, and like I'd feel a lot of heat in my body, and it would be like the solar plexus would be like super on fire, and then I'd let my voice out. Sometimes like I'll hit a pillow or whatever it is I did to sort of move that energy through my body, and then I'd be like, okay, that was rage, or that was anger, or that was a lot of heat in my body. And so that's how I started to kind of reconnect and almost like rediscover. I call it the emotional palette, or the feelings palette that is available to all of us. And that is what ultimately, like, makes us alive.
That's not true.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I would say I figured it out. And then obviously, after that, then I started doing all the inner child work and connecting to those little parts of myself that were, not allowed to have the feelings. And now as an adult, it is my responsibility to allow those parts of myself to feel and to meet them.
Mhm.
And that's how this work kind of unfolds. So we first connect to those feelings, and I like to look at feelings as like, our stuck feelings or things that we're really like not willing to feel. They're big feelings. They're They're sometimes not easy to feel, but they're like little parts of us. They're younger parts of ourselves. And um, those younger parts of ourselves, they just need presence, attention, and to be met. And sometimes it's another person, another support that will do that for us. And sometimes it's really good to start with that. But eventually it's us who need to learn how to show up for those parts of ourselves. Um, and ultimately not like turn our back on those parts of ourselves, because when we turn our back, or when we ignore or we dismiss or we go into our head and we like try to analyze or we rationalize, we're just kind of we're just repeating the pattern. We're keeping up, where we're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It literally just got me questioning like the moment that you started to, for example, turn on a song and move your body and dance, and you would encounter those emotions. Was there also, was it difficult? Was it overwhelming? Or was it just like, oh, it's finally out?
It was definitely difficult and overwhelming. It was all those things. Sometimes it's still difficult, sometimes it's still overwhelming. What what has changed over time, the more I practiced showing up for myself and the more I do it today, is that my capacity to be with just like grows bigger. So what happened in the beginning is when I would have a big feeling, like I think for a lot of us, the first instinct is that we're scared of it. It's because it's not entirely familiar. Sometimes it's big, sometimes we're scared it's going to overtake us. And it's like we're scared. And when we're scared, we have like a lot of strategies to move away from that feeling. And so what I did is I worked with a lot of people to help me stay in my body when those big feelings would show up, while I had someone else hold space for me and continue to bring me back into my body. And after some time, I learned how to do that for myself. So I would say that this journey is about, or at least it has been for me, it's not having the feelings, it's not being afraid of the feelings, it's not like making them less intense. It's more about having more space to hold the feeling and to meet the feeling, while still being present with myself and while not needing the feeling to change or to go away or to do whatever. So to me, this journey of embodiment is really this journey of creating space bit by bit, with practice bit by bit, like learning how to be with the intensity that runs through the nervous system and our emotions and our bodies, and like not run away from it, or like you can still be scared of it, but then you can also have space for the fear and for the emotion. So it's about space. It's about creating space. Um, because our nervous system, like we're wired to have all the feelings. We're wired to have fear. We're wired to have deep joy. We're wired to have deep grief. Like we're wired for it all. And that is our human aliveness, which I think is one of the greatest gifts of being here in these bodies. Um, so I'm not into like not having feelings or minimizing feelings or making them less intense. I'm much more into let's create the space where you can meet the feeling, and where you can be with the feeling. So I don't think that it's ever um easy or less intense, or maybe it gets a little bit less overwhelming. all the time. So, because I think the intensity stays, but it's just how we show up for the intensity is what changes.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. So, if somebody that is listening to this right now quite identifies with that and is like, wow, I'm kind of pushing away and doesn't know how to start, how would you maybe recommend getting into it, creating the space, creating or like being able to go into the body and being able to feel that? What would your advice be?
It's a really good question. So, Um, first thing, if someone is just starting this journey, I always recommend getting support. Like if we're just getting into like, okay, I'm gonna start exploring feelings or, what is this numbness? I'm gonna come out of freeze. I'm gonna, feel what I'm here to feel. I don't think we're meant to doing this on our own. And a part of our wiring in our nervous system is to have support and if, especially for people, and this is very much my journey, that were growing up and they felt alone in their feelings, like there wasn't support in their feelings, there's only so much that we can do on our own on our healing journey before um, the next step of the healing is actually allowing support in and actually allowing other people to witness us and to hold space for us. Because the way that our nervous system works, it's through co-regulation. So we need an other to meet us and to be with us through challenging times and stressful situations. And for myself and for a lot of the people that I work with, um, they had to deal with those challenging situations on their own. So the nervous system didn't get a lot of the wiring for co-regulation. And this is something I actually see a lot nowadays is that we're at this place of like, okay, I know how to do the things. I've done the retreats, I've done the trainings, like I've read the books, I have the to-do list. Um, and I'm gonna do it all on my own. And it could work to some extent, but I feel like for a lot of us at this point in our kind of healing evolution, the next step to the healing is actually not doing it alone. It's doing it with other people because it's like the healing journey. A part of it is yes, that self-awareness and that, you're cultivating that relationship with yourself, but a big part of it is connection.
Yeah.
And so there's only so far that we can get by ourselves. So to that person, I would say, have connection, have support, find your people, find your whoever you want to work with to help you do that. And once there's been enough resources built within the system to be able to be like, okay, I'm not like losing my ground every single time I go into anger or I go into grief or, like sometimes I don't know if you've ever had those feelings where it's like, okay, you drop into grief and there's so much grief and it like takes you out for days. Just like it's like you can't function, you're just like, oh, okay, there was so much grief. So those days will happen, but eventually like the resources will be built up where there can be enough support and enough inner holding to to be like, okay, this is grief. I'm there for myself. I have the resources. I'm going to do what I need to do that day. And then it's like I'm functional afterwards. I'm not as kind of dysfunctional or not down too much. And in terms of, connecting to the self, baby steps,
Mhm.
baby steps. Like you don't have to feel everything all at once. And our nervous system is actually not going to let us feel everything at once. The beauty and the wisdom of how we are wired and what we come with in our nervous system is that we release when we feel safe.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to release or if you're trying to access feelings and you're coming from this place within yourself, it's like, okay, I need to do this. It's time. I've been at this journey for 10 years. Like I should be able to, I should be able to do this. So if you're thinking about a little child who is not feeling safe and you're coming as an adult with that attitude, is that child going to feel safe to be vulnerable? Chances are probably not. And so it's it's everything. If I were to summarize everything, it's all about safety. It's all about how safe we feel within ourselves and how safe we feel with other people. And when the nervous system feels safe, that is when we start to soften into our vulnerability.
I love that. And I also love that you bring in the nervous system because I know for a fact that you're an expert on this. Um, and honestly, like the way how I met you, you
Mhm.
were able to create that space to really bring down our nervous system. So maybe that would be my next question. How can we help our nervous system get from fight, flight, or freeze into what you just said, like into something that feels safe? What can we do?
Mhm. That is the million-dollar question. That
Yeah.
is the million-dollar question. So I'll just a little kind of brief explanation of our nervous system. I'm very much into the polyvagal theory, which was kind of first developed by Stephen Porges and then um, Deb Dana and a lot of other people. But those are the people that I've studied with quite a bit about the nervous system and the polyvagal system. So our nervous system has like we used to think that it was kind of just like two branches, like the relaxation and then the fight flight. But now we know that there are more. And I'll just talk very briefly. We have three branches of our nervous system. So one of them, the oldest one, is called the dorsal branch, and the dorsal branch is all about um, basically kind of shutting down all of our systems in order to survive. So when we're in very dire circumstances, so let's say like you're a zebra and you're running away from a lion, okay, but the lion grabs you and you're in the jaw of the lion, and it's kind of maybe these are your last moments of life. So what starts to happen in the zebra is it starts to basically shut everything down and kind of like self anesthetize in order not to feel. So it starts to numb out, so to prevent it from feeling pain or feeling, as little pain as possible. And so this is the oldest branch of our nervous system, and this is something that is very much accessible to us and very alive in us. And this is where we go when there's been very kind of dire circumstances or an amount of stress and overwhelm in our life and we just didn't have the support for it. So this is where we go when like, okay, I've tried, nothing has worked, and okay, I give up. It's this like apathy. I have no more energy for anything on a cellular level, like kind of a lot of systems shut down and we go into energy preservation mode. We're not generating energy anymore. We're just kind of preserving. Um, so this is one branch of our nervous system. And in this branch of our nervous system, we're disconnected from intensity, we're disconnected from the larger feelings, but we're disconnected from joy. So there is no kind of joie de vivre in that part of our nervous system because we're not really here. We're here, but we're not really here. In the next part, so the sympathetic branch is what's known as, fight, flight. There's also fawn, so it's a lot of our people pleasing. There's the freeze in that part of our nervous system, which is kind of like it's a freeze of like deer in the headlights kind of freeze. And also when we go into fix, so fixing is also part of the sympathetic nervous system. And so this is where we are when we're triggered when we're mobilized into action. So something has happened, like, okay, like I don't know, someone hits me, rear ends me in the car. So there's a lot of things that are going to happen. So if the impact is pretty small, like the first thing might be like I might get angry. I might be like, I might start cussing or something and, being like, why aren't you paying attention? I might get out of the car and I might see like who the person is and what's going on. So I might be ready to have a verbal fight depending on how I process the situation. If I'm afraid of conflict, I might put a smile on my face and try and, you know, resolve this with as little conflict as possible because conflict isn't safe. So, okay, yeah, I'll take down your information and let insurance handle this, and then that's it. Or I might actually just kind of look at this person, do whatever I need to do, and just like go away as fast as possible. So I might like flight. I might just need to like run because it's too stressful. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. Um, so that's our sympathetic nervous system, and that is that's kind of the next branch. So it developed after our dorsal branch, so our sympathetic branch. And then the last, and this is the most recent part, and by recent I mean like 200 million years, is the ventral vagal part of our nervous system. And this is the part of us that is wired to for social engagement. So to connect, to belong, to reach out for support when we're in trouble, to be in connection with other human beings, uh, in with love, with patience, with compassion, with support, with camaraderie, and all the things. So we are this amazing spectrum. And one of the things that I was very good at, you know, on my healing journey, and I see it, in the clients that I work with all the time is, let's say I'm in sympathetic, or I can't come out of my fight or flight, or let's say I'm getting into a depressive state going in towards my dorsal because I'm just overwhelmed. I'm gonna take a nap because I'm just checking out, like I'm not there anymore. We love to judge ourselves for these what we call these imperfect states, but from a nervous system lens, all the states, everything that we feel has like very good reasons, very, very good reasons. So one of the workshops that I give is on the nervous system and how to sort of move through these stages. And when we are in, let's say, a fight or flight, or when you're in that place of like your to-do list and you're kind of going through the motions, but you're just not fully present, you're not fully feeling, you're not fully aware of what you're needing. Um, in a state like this, it's really good to meet that place within yourself with more energy. So instead of trying to be like, okay, I'm going to go take a restorative class while I'm spinning in my head, instead of that, take a boxing class first. So meet yourself where you're at first. And then once you meet yourself and you get some of that energy out, see if there's space within you to go just to go a little bit kind of lower into yourself, into a more relaxed place within yourself. Because a lot of the times what we do is we think, okay, I'm too stressed, or I'm too this, and we're trying to do the thing that we're supposed to do, but the nervous system requires kind of a lot of steps before that thing. So if I'm super depressed, or if I'm super overwhelmed, and I'm trying to, go be social with people and, hug trees and sing Kumbaya together, it's not like it's not possible. It's not possible. There are things in between that need to happen before we can get there. And so if we're in like a very kind of depressive state, it's one of the things that we can do is we can find little things to like spring into action. So if I am in a if I'm just in like horizontal and I can't get out of bed and I'm like ugh another day or whatever it is I'm feeling, um maybe go for a walk. Just start going for a walk, or maybe get yourself out in nature. Or maybe if you have a friend, connect with a friend who's doing something and you can come along, but you don't need to show up as somebody else. Like those friends that don't put pressure on you to like be a certain way, where you can just like be like, okay, I get that you're, in a depressive state, but you still belong. You can still be with me while, let's say, I go surfing, you can hang out on the beach, but we're together. So it's kind of injecting those little moments into the nervous system that will start taking us towards sympathetic and then towards kind of the ventral, the connected branch, because we have to go through the ladder. We can't skip steps. Does that make sense?
Suppose so.
So it's all about meeting ourselves where we're at and with like the utmost love and compassion. Because in order for us to drop into a place like dorsal, that means we had so much stress to get there without having the support. So if we don't have the support, it makes a lot of sense that we will go there. So there's no point in judging ourselves for it. It's like we have to show up with so much compassion and so much understanding that how our body works and how our nervous system works is actually for us. It's not against us.
Mhm.
And I personally believe that when we're in those kind of more difficult, more maybe static places on our journey, um, those are the moments where we get to practice a lot of love for ourselves by showing up in compassion, by showing up with curiosity about, well, what is it that I need here? Like, if, going out dancing while I'm in horizontal is too big of a stretch, and usually it is, like what is within reach?
Yeah.
And it might be that walk. It might be just calling a friend and saying, "Hey, like I am super depressed right now, and I just need someone to know." Or it might be like listening to a podcast. It might be reading a book. It might be turning on some music or turning on a favorite movie to get us to start moving towards action and then ultimately towards connection. I had I'm going to share an example of a client. I had a client, she woke up, and this is a client that like really is very well aware of the nervous system and the branches, and she's been doing a lot of work, and she just had one of those days where she woke up and it was heavy. It was really, really heavy. And she was like, "Wow, I'm having a really hard time getting out of bed this morning." Um, so it's like, okay, well, what can I do? So she kind of got up, she brushed her teeth, and she has like no energy. She doesn't want to engage with the world. So what did she do? She had an orgasm. She went for a jog. She came back. She put some good fuel into her body and made a like a phone call to a friend and showed up for work feeling completely engaged and ready to connect.
Wow.
And that's just an example of one, that was like a span of like 2 hours
Uh-huh.
of one person's journey through different stages of the nervous system. Is that everybody's 2 hours journey? Absolutely not. But that is an example of what someone who is aware of their nervous system and kind of how it flows might be able to do in order to get themselves to a place where they can show up in connection with other people. And sometimes it doesn't happen in 2 hours. Sometimes, like, it's just not possible during the day. But whatever we can do to start kind of moving in that direction is already us showing up in love for ourselves.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that because I heard a lot of something that I needed to hear almost 2 years ago.
Mm,
I just briefly want to share because um, it gets me thinking that someone said to me, whenever the mind cannot be quiet, you need to move your body. Like you need to do the opposite, and vice versa. If the body doesn't want to be still, doing some stillness like yin yoga, it's not going to do the work, you know. Because I have this example of it was almost 2 years ago. I was mentally so stressed. There was so much going on in my head, and I was like, let's meditate. I would sit down repeatedly, and I was wondering, like, I asked myself, like, why is it not working? Why is meditating not working? But I was not moving my body. I was not doing yoga. I was not going for a walk because I was mentally exhausted that I thought, like, I cannot do anything else. So let's just meditate. Let's meditate the stress away. And it didn't work. And it would have helped to know back then that I just needed to move my body in some way to unlock whatever was going on here to be able to flow down. And
yeah.
it's like exactly what you just described.
Yeah. So that's a great personal example
Yeah,
because what in that example, you're overwhelmed, you're too stressed, you're just like not fully here, but you're trying to meditate, you're skipping a lot of steps.
yeah,
So there's a big gap between, and in those points, like you said, do anything that gets you into action, gets you into movement.
yeah,
Because it's movement that connects us to our bodies, and then in our bodies is where we find the guidance for what's next.
yeah, exactly.
So that's why I'm such a freak about the body.
Yeah,
Um, because like I feel home in my body. I used to feel home here and not home in my body. Now it's the opposite. Whenever I'm here, I feel completely homeless. I feel like I'm just lost. I'm completely lost. So I need to do whatever I need to do to come back to my body because that's ultimately the ground underneath my feet. The connection to my body is the ground underneath my feet. And at this point in my life, it's become my everything. It's my guide. It's my guidance system. Um, it's really my everything. Like I don't do anything in my life without checking into my body first,
mhm,
without getting my yeses, without getting my nos. Like a recent example is I just went trekking in the Himalayas. And like I just kind of did this trek. I didn't know a lot about it and I didn't train for it. I was just like, I just want to be in the Himalayas, so I'm just gonna do this. And people have itineraries, so I looked up an itinerary. I checked in with some guides about itineraries, and I was like, okay, I have an itinerary, so I'm just going to follow that. And you meet people along the along the line on the trek, and everyone's kind of doing the same itinerary. And what I noticed is that like what I would meet people in the guest houses, like uh it was a very mental thing for a lot of people. Like we have to get here the next day, we have to get here the next day, and we have to get here the next day. But we're at a very high altitude. We're like 4,000, 5,000 meters up. So at high altitudes, being in the head is not entirely the best thing because what starts to happen is you can get altitude sickness, you can just have a lot of different issues with the body. And I went into it just having like a rough itinerary. And like after the first day, I trekked and, when you're getting higher up, like oxygen is thin, everything just becomes way more difficult. It was like this magical lesson for me, where like I had to stay present with my body and checking in with myself every single day, every single hour about what I needed and what was energetically possible and not possible for me as a matter of survival. It's almost like like you I couldn't, if I didn't do that, if I stayed in my head, I'm not sure that I would have made it through the trek or made it, period. So it was one of those very kind of potent moments for me where I saw the value of all the work that I've been doing to be in my body, to have the connection with my body, to be able to do something like that. And there were moments on my itinerary in the trek where I would wake up and I would check in with my body. It's like, can we do another 7K at this altitude today? And it was a very clear no. And it was a very clear, you're going to do 2 kilometers today and then you're going to rest. And I was like hands down devoted, loyal follower to what my body was saying because there was no way that I could do this over this on a trek like that. So that's just like an ex kind of more of an extreme example, but that just goes to show that um yeah, our bodies are just these magical, all the wisdom is here. We just have to connect.
True. And you're actually like the perfect example of somebody who is like really just very intuitive and like so aligned with your body that you wouldn't do anything that feels literally feels wrong or feels like if it's not a clear yes, I believe that you would like, or the other way around. If it's not a clear, no, wait. If it's not a, yeah, if it's not a clear yes, then it's definitely a no for you.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah. And totally. And if it's a no for a reason. So, our yeses and our nos, they live in our bodies and they require for us to respect them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And what a lot of us learned is to override those feelings in our bodies when something didn't feel right, or we were still like, okay, like I'll do it, nah, nah. And it creates a lot of pain within ourselves. And yeah, one of the greatest gifts that we have in ourselves is our yes and our no. And one of the first things that I ever do with people is we get to learn about our yes and our no and what it feels like in our body. And that becomes like the altar at which we sit. Uh, what is a yes? What is a no? What is a, okay, what's that maybe? And if it's not a yes and it's not a no, it's okay. Maybe it's not time to make that decision yet. When not sure, do nothing. That's like another one of my mantras. So, yeah. So it just kind of goes to show
Yeah.
about.
And what I also love is you didn't say in your introduction, but I know because the Chine Sang that you do
Mhm.
is actually like the perfect bridge to that because everybody says like listen to your gut feeling because
Yeah.
it's our second brain. And there we
Yeah.
have it, like your for everybody who doesn't know, maybe you would like to um explain what it is. So
So Qigong is an ancient form of body work that works with the belly. It works into the internal organs and specifically with the belly. And so it's abdominal massage basically. And we host, we host our organs in the belly. We also host our kind of second brain in the belly because we have some brain cells in our bellies. And like you said, follow your gut. This is our central station for how we digest not just food nutrients, but also like how we digest life and how we digest relationships. And the nutrition that comes or doesn't come from relationships is also in the belly. So a big part of our vagus nerve runs through the belly. Actually, the dorsal part of our vagus nerve runs through the belly. So doing any kind of work around the belly uh will at the very least connect a person more deeply to themselves and to their body and to their felt sense, and at the very most have like tremendous healing, because there's a lot of things that can happen in a like in a belly session. Sometimes people have emotions, sometimes people release trauma. Um, Sometimes insights come in, sometimes there's just like this deep sense of relaxation. And for many people, it's the first time where their belly gets touched and where they actually have this connection to the belly.
Mm.
And if you think about this part of our body, like it's not just it's our organs, it's our vagus nerve, it's our solar plexus, it's our, for women, it's kind of the womb space. You're getting into that. So there's a lot.
Yeah.
It's
Now,
beautiful.
yeah. Now hearing like your whole story and like everything that you up until now talked about, for me it makes much more sense why you're so into it. Why, like back in Thailand, I saw how passionate you were about it and really loved doing it. And now I see the connection of why, the like all of how it's connected to your own journey and everything that you know, all the wisdom that you hold. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think like it's really interesting for some people who've never heard of it to be introduced like into a new practice. I'm also just really curious. There's one question that's burning that I'm burning to ask you, just because, yeah, what are your very like daily normal own wellness practices that you do?
So thank you. Um, yeah, because it's interesting as we're going like in this new year, um, a lot of it is changing for me. So it used to be, I used to be like, I had my morning routines, which were, kind of planned out. Um, and now it's much more fluid. So again, I wake up and I'm at the altar of my body. I ask my body what it needs. So because I live on the beach, so because I am so close to nature, a daily practice for me is water, touching my feet on sand and water because I have a very strong connection to water, being in water, looking at water, being around water. And interestingly enough, that helps me be in the flow. It helps me be in my own flow. For me, it's also a womb. The ocean for me is like a womb. So sometimes when I'm having a hard day, or sometimes when I'm working with a lot of clients and I start to take on stuff and I can feel it and I could feel myself just kind of getting a little bit heavier, I will go into the water and I am held there. I am held and I release a lot in the water. So movement is a big part of it. So there is at least like a 5 to 7 minute dance moment in my day,
I love
whether it's at the end of my day or at the morning of my day. I no longer not dance. And it's just literally like I'll go on Spotify and they'll be like, oh, suggested playlist. I sometimes do it with my eyes closed. Like I will just turn on a song and I will just start moving my body. And the beautiful part about this, I don't have a goal for that.
occupation.
It's just movement. Let me just move. Let me feel free. Let me just like liberate energy if I need to do that. Food's becoming a big thing for me now. I'm just becoming very kind of aware of food. So just yeah, when you're living in like a tropical climate, I feel like it's very easy to do just kind of lighter. So I'm becoming much more friendly with fruits and vegetables in their raw form and just keeping it very, very simple, like a very simple diet. And uh exploring new things, doing new things. I try to do that like on the daily, whether I'm taking like a new route to go somewhere, just trying to get into like a curiosity and a creative energy in whatever way that I can. And that can just be the dance because you're dancing every time you're moving, you're doing it in a new way. But just like, okay, if it's the same beach that I go to, like going to a tree that I haven't seen before, just having that element of newness, of freshness, of curiosity and exploration. That is an important part of staying in our ventral vagal nervous system, which is the part of us that helps us connect and belong and, feel safe.
Mhm.
Just keep myself engaged with the world in a fresh way. So those are, it's very basic. I'm not like a person who's like, okay, and do this and do that and do that. Sometimes it's like I do teach, I mean, I do teach a lot of private groups here in Costa Rica, and sometimes it's yoga, but a lot of the times it's not. Sometimes it's just breath. Like I just want to connect to my breath, just spend like 2 minutes just noticing my breath or doing a breathing technique. But a lot of it is really movement and feeling connected to nature, which uh, inspires me to connect to my body because our body is our nature and nature is our body. Like it's one circle for me. So yeah, I always tell people, even if you live in a city, even when I was living in Toronto, get out in nature. Just go hug a tree, go sit on the ground, go, I don't know, go touch snow if you need to. Do whatever, go look at water if you have water close to you. Just connect to nature because nature's medicine is aliveness. It's real, it's authentic, it's wild, and it's alive. And it helps us just by being in touch with nature, it helps us to connect to that aliveness and authenticity and that kind of unconditioned sense of self.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. And it's so cool. Actually, like now I'm very much inspired just to turn on a song every morning and just dance, because also I heard that when you just jump in the morning, it's like some kind of natural lymphatic drainage for the body. So if you just include that too, it's like a double win-win situation. Like, yeah, I feel
Or
like,
or shaking. Like if you just stand and you start shaking, like shaking your limbs and your bum, and like you can go crazy with your hair and all that stuff. That also gets a lot of those fluids moving through the body, and it's super, super helpful. It's really simple.
but it's,
I think, yeah, I think we make it so complicated for ourselves with doing it right, with the sort of the rituals and the this and the that and the yes, I'll journal sometimes when I'm inspired to. Yes, I'll do the yoga when I'm inspired to, but it's in the moment. It's in the moment. And I think this is one of the greatest. Um, it's the greatest gift that I believe this is the greatest gift that we have is because I believe that like our nervous system, it's the conduit of our spirit.
Mhm,
And the feelings in our bodies are the language with which that spirit speaks to us.
mhm,
And so if we just take the time to connect to our bodies and how we're feeling and what's alive in the moment, we are here. We're here. We
mhm,
become present and we are showing up for life.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. There's one last question that I want to ask before we go into the closing sequence. So, Natalia, if there is something and you're comfortable sharing it, is there something at the moment that you struggle with?
Hmm.
What are you doing about it at the moment? Any strategies, techniques, tools, anything that you feel comfortable sharing?
I would say that it's the same thing that I've struggled with my whole life. So and it is my kind of biggest pattern that I am here to shift, I guess, and it still shows up. In sometimes bigger ways, sometimes smaller ways. And it's a pattern that showed up when I met you when I was working at the retreat in Thailand. And that pattern is when I'm being asked to show up in a supportive role and hold space, and when I'm being asked to do that in a big way, in a like, okay, we want you to do that a lot. Um, I can slowly shove myself into the back seat and my needs into the back seat, and other people's needs a priority. And there was a moment when I first got to that retreat center in Thailand in the beginning, because I was, I had a month of like trekking and I was in La La Land being in vacation mode, and it's like boom, you arrive and now I'm holding space, I'm working. And for the first, like, I would say 8 to 9 days, it was just like nonstop. And I'm in a new environment. So, and I don't have transport. So it's really hard for me to, to like have some kind of thing that I can do for myself. And so, yeah, after like day 8, I was like, okay, so I'm starting to feel drained. I'm starting to feel tired. And it's not so much that I'm giving so much energy to other people. It's more about that I am starting to abandon myself. So I had to have a very like, I had to take a moment to myself. Like there was an evening where I sat down with myself and I connected with that part of myself that was very upset and hurt, that like I wasn't paying attention to what I was needing. And what I was needing was a break, and I was needing to receive energy for myself. I was also needing like a big pat on the shoulder from what that part of me kind of told me. And I needed the acknowledgement of my own self for how hard I've been working and how much I've been showing up for other people in a very beautiful way, and how much I love doing that. And how I need to balance that within myself. So that pattern of still kind of overriding my needs in order to show up for other people is still very much alive in me. But I was able to like notice it relatively quickly, and I remedied it very, very quickly. So um, I don't know if you were there, but I ended up taking 2 days off. Like I went off into Chiang Mai and I had like a day of sauna and cold bath and massages and a facial, and I went for good food, and I got a Reiki session for myself, and I went into like a group breathwork journey. And after those 2 days, like I was like, okay, my batteries are recharged. I took time for myself, and when I got back to the retreat center, people were like, oh, you look very different. I was like, that's because I feel very different. So that is the challenge. The challenge is how do I keep me while I am there for other people?
Yeah. And still figuring it out, huh?
Yeah, still figuring it out. Still, sometimes there are, flops here and there. It's much easier for me because I'm now kind of in a home space. So I have my supports, I have my nature, I have my, the people that give me energy. So I have that. When you're traveling, it's a little bit more challenging, but um, it's it's about the moment I start to notice it, and I have, certain symptoms that start to happen, like I become like this child that starts to throw tantrums, and I'm like, okay, that's when it's time to be like, okay, you need time off, you need me time, and you just need a break.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that you were able to, as you said, notice it relatively early, and then
Mhm.
also able to take the steps needed for yourself, because I think other people still struggle with that.
Yeah.
They need a long time to get aware of it, and then they're still like, I feel blocked or I don't know what to do. But you're already in the really good position of, okay, I notice it, and now we
Mhm.
need to hit the brake, and we just go and do something for ourselves. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a big break for me. And those don't happen that often anymore to that extreme. Um, But when they do happen, it's a big kind of moment of like, okay, okay, yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really valuable as well. Um, so I would say we go just right into the closing questions. They're meant to be very lighthearted, so don't think about them too much. Um,
Okay.
but I'm just going to start off with one that I actually really like to hear from everybody. And it's also related to our podcast.
Mhm.
So, who are some women in your life that have inspired you?
Ah. So the first thing that comes to me when I hear that question is the women that I have met in my travels that live in villages.
Wow.
Um, it's the women who are still, like, for example, in Asia, women who are still washing things by hand, preparing meals on the most like rustic metal setups, who are touching their children, with their hugs, with their washing their hair and putting their clothes on. The women who gather in community within their families. So the women that inspire me and continue to inspire me are the women who live very simple lives, but in connection to themselves. And for me, that connection to themselves spreads out into connection uh, in the environments where they are and into their families. And that's very ventral vagal nervous system for me.
Mhm.
So women who are connected inspire me, and women uh, who do things the old school way. I'm a big sucker for old school ways. Um, that are hard to find, especially in the West. Because when I see that, I get more into my body.
Mhm. Yeah, I hear that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Beautiful
you're
answer. So
thank you.
the next one would be, what does fearless mean to you?
Okay, so when you asked me to be a part of the podcast, I thought about it. I thought about the word fearless, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm gonna put it out there anyway. So I, for me, because I know that we're wired to have fear, being fearless is it's not really possible. What I believe in is being fearful and practicing courage while we're connecting to fear. Because we will always have fear. Like fear will always be a part of our life, but it's a doorway to practice courage because courage is a skill. It's something we can practice. It's something that we can grow within ourselves. So I actually love fear. I love when fear shows up in my life because I know that it's an opportunity for me to grow my courage muscle. And the word courage comes from courage, which comes from cœur in French, which means heart. So for me, courage is very much related to heart
Mhm.
and showing up and expanding my heart in whatever way that's possible when fear enters my life or it enters my system. So I'm into fearful and courageous. I'll put it that way.
See, but that's what I mean. Like, you're so inspiring of how you answer this question. I'm like, wow, that is so cool. Yeah. And I mean, it is about the relationship we have with fear because it will, as you said, it will always be there. It's just how are we going to engage with it?
Exactly.
You said it beautifully. Thank you.
You.
Then the next one would be very, very lighthearted. Just,
Mhm.
don't think about it too much. If your life was a movie, what would the title be?
Hmm. The word flow comes to mind.
Love it. I wouldn't
It would
have expected anything other.
be flow. Yeah,
And
because that's how I've showed up in my life. Everything in my life has been about flowing with it and going downstream, not upstream.
it's how I've gotten to know you. It's so true. Yeah, you're a very flowy person. Yeah, love that. And the last question before formalities is any advice or any wisdom that you would like to share for our listeners, for our audience
Mm.
that comes to mind.
Um, what's coming is that we spend so much time trying to find answers outside, and they're all inside. Um, trust what you already have and trust that every ounce of feeling that runs through your day or through your life has a very good reason. It's not something to judge. It's not something to be ashamed of. Every feeling has value and information and wisdom, and connect and trust. Trust that it's all here and it's working for you, not against you.
I love that. What a beautiful advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Last
Woohoo!
but not least, so if our audience wants to reach out to you, anything, any social media accounts, any websites that you would like to share so they can.
Yeah, so as you know, I haven't been very much on social media, because I'm out in the ocean or in a forest most of the time without, an internet connection. But that is one of my intentions actually for 2025 is I'm going to start creating more content, and sharing it with people. So I have an Instagram account. It's embodied_reconnection, which I'm going to start, becoming more active in. So that's a way to get in touch with me and send me a message. And my website is embodiedinnature.com. And my email and like, all that other contact information is there. So if anyone feels called to reach out, that is the way to get in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, so we've come to the end of the interview, and Natalia, I'm honestly like, wow. I'm first of all, I'm so happy that we sit down here and we had this chat and that we made it work after all the organizational issues that we ran into. But we made it. We're here, and I feel like I'm starting to understand that back in Thailand, we were meant to meet to be able to sit down here and have this chat and for you to share your story that will help other people, you know. The wisdom
Yeah.
that you shared, the things you shared from your own personal background. Even if just one person hears that, you know, and is able to take something from it, it's
Mhm.
already a win. So
Thank
I'm just really, really grateful, very thankful for you to have shared your energy and your time with me today and with us with the podcast. So, truly, truly grateful. Thank you for sharing everything that you did. And yeah, I'm just really happy that we have this connection. And I'm sure that in 2025, at one point, we will meet in Thailand again. Yay!
you.
And thank you for everything that you have done before as well in the retreat. I really, I wouldn't have reached out if, you know, there wouldn't have been that connection, and I wouldn't have feel drawn to your energy and to you. So thank you.
Thank you
And
so
yeah,
Thank you for showing up. Thank you for inviting me. I feel like it's been a really, warm conversation. I feel a lot of warmth in my body right now. So, that tells me that my nervous system is speaking to me and it's saying it's like, check. Um, so thank you for that. Thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.
yes, same. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. And if you want, leave a comment, reach out, and we see you next week. Bye.